Cluster 9, your notebook or your textbook, has some really cool stuff to it in terms of cognitive processes. So we're going to look at a few of those to give you the highlights. First one being metacognition. Okay, so when we talk about metacognition, it's the idea of being able to think about how we think. That's really what it is, and our thinking processes. So that can include several things. So like if I'm reading a book and I want to stay alert and kind of linked to the content, I can engage in self-talk, like what's happening now, what's happening next, what do I think's going to happen next, has that ever happened to me? So I can actively ask myself questions to keep me engaged. Self-reflection can also happen after, so what did I learn from actually going through this process? They build the first concept in the textbook around something that you're probably very familiar with, which is a KWL chart or analysis. So the K is, what do I already know? So I'm asking myself that before I walk into an activity, before I read a book, before I actually do an experiment. What do I want to know? So if I mix this and this together, will I get something explosive? That's what I want to know. And then L, what have I learned from the process? They do go over some strategies, like, so if you're dealing with a textbook, you can go over strategies like highlighting, writing summaries, self-talk, like, again, like asking what's important, building visual maps to represent a concept, or taking notes. But the big issue is knowing when to apply these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give you a series of tools to work with to try to experiment with these processes, and they're going to be digital tools. So I'm going to go over what it looks like to build a concept map with a program that's an online program called BubbleUs. Your textbook uses CMap tools. It's a really clunky version of a semantic mapping tool compared to other programs. BubbleUs is really easy, intuitive, so we're just going to do that. Then I'm going to show you how to do some guided notes using a program that allows you to basically create the blanks in the notes. And then I'm going to show you how to build an ebook using UDL Book Builder, which can kind of treat the whole, the whole idea of the KWL chart in a different manner through scaffolding. Okay, so it's a different cognitive process in terms of engagement. First step in metacognition. So this is like mapping out something as a concept, process, hierarchy, etc. So if we have students do this with, say, like basically things like the different segments of government in the United States, etc., and their responsibilities of each branch, and that allows us to have them kind of make the concept more concrete and visual. Again, so it's kind of thinking about their thinking. So the way that they're linked together, etc., right? So I'm just going to start brainstorming. I'm not going to register or sign in. So again, the site's bubbl.us. So like I said, it's a very simple site. So I've got this main idea here. So what if I wanted to map out a process, like, say, the steps in a I don't know, the steps in, say, a persuasive essay. Okay, so you see as I hover over, I tab to go over there. I'm on a Mac, so it's going to be Command Enter if I want to drop children nodes off. Again, so it kind of denotes a hierarchy. So what goes on within a process, so I can do like a pattern of flow in this case. So I'm going to do Command Return. I'll go back to my main node again. Command Return, because these are like steps, step 1, step 2, step 3. See, I made a child node, don't want to do that. So I can just hover over that, right? And then what I want to do is, if I want to delete it, let's try again. Press delete on your keyboard or backspace. So again, if this was a step process, right? So I can do step one, and that could be something like create a hypothesis. Step two, take a side. Step three, support your opinion. Something like that, right? Oops. So how do I do that again? Again, Command Enter. Step three, and it will pick up on spelling mistakes. Step three. So that allows us to do that. What if I wanted to change it up to be something different entirely? So again, if I did, say, government, and then I did and then I can have stuff fall underneath the hierarchy below that, right? So that's one way of doing metacognition, right? It's to actually map out the concept. Part of your textbook, it talks about the idea of taking notes as a mechanism for metacognition, and the author goes to this idea that eventually you can synthesize, resynthesize, rewrite your notes for a class, any given class, until you get to like basically a 2-page synthesis of the entire thing by writing in this rewriting process. Okay, but how do we get to the point that we actually train our students to get them into the habit of taking good notes, what's important versus what's extraneous? Probably a good way, and again, it really is talking about why we're using this. So where we use the bubbles to map out an entire process to give kind of a macro look to any particular concept, this is kind of creating more of a micro look and helping us build vocabulary, concepts, and figuring out what's important versus what's not important, right? So let's say I've got this, this long text, right, that equivalent of what could be me speaking on metacognition, so thinking about one's thinking. So what if I copied this, all this stuff, and these were my lecture notes, and then I go over to this site here. So this is interventioncentral.org, and this is their guided note maker, which I use frequently. So in this case, I'm just going to put the title to our course. Okay, so I'm just going to put a course title. And then I'm just going to drop that stuff in there. Okay, so it includes everything, including the picture there. So, and apparently I can't get the picture out. So we're just going to leave the picture in. And just tap it down so it's out of the way. Ha, now I backspace, now I got it. All right, so if I go through this, and again, I'm treating these are my lecture notes. This is what I'm working directly from. I can go in and I can have the students fill in the vocab and the terms simply by, let me scroll down a little bit. So let's say here I want to knock this one out, create a blank space out of it. Blank space for metacognition is, put simply, thinking about one's thinking. More precisely, it refers to the process used to plan, monitor, and let's throw assess into the burner there. One's understanding and performance. Metacognition includes a critical awareness of one's thinking and learning, oneself as a thinker and learner. Initially studied for its development in young children, and take development out. Researchers soon began to look at how experts display metacognitive thinking and how then these thought processes can be taught to novices to improve their learning. So I'm not going to worry about any about that. take abilities out, just so you guys get the idea. Okay. So that way you're kind of using a way of training them into see what the concepts and what vocabulary, particularly in this case, is important. Of course, I could blank out like large segments of things, one of three key findings, right? So they'd actually have to fill in that whole phrase, right, or clause. So then I can include the teacher's answer list. It's going to go out as a PDF. And sure enough, there you go. So now you actually have a fill in the blanks so the students can pay attention. Again, though, what we're socializing them is to think about how they need to think. So what the concepts we're training them into. So these macro concepts, these particular clauses of what's important information. So we need to identify the most important facts or information within our lecture, write up our notes, and then do that as a training mechanism so they can learn how we're thinking and model that on their thinking, or learn to model their thinking based on that. Finally, we can talk about, we can return back to that idea, the KWL chart, as a learning strategy and metacognition, and the fact that we're analyzing what we want to know, what we're learning, and what we learned through the process. Now, this is CAST's UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, book builder program. So you can go into bookbuilder.cast.org and you can simply create a free account. I'm just going to start a new book so you guys can kind of see what the mechanics look like. So let's say I want to do a book on photosynthesis by Dr. Ellis. Okay, so then content area is science, and it's going to be somewhere around there. I'm going to do it so it takes up the space, so I'm going to do it landscape. Okay, so when we talked about the whole idea of knowledge and what we want to learn, so what we know already, this program has a capacity for us to basically build an interactive book so the child sees the page of the book, but down below it there are different coaches. So the coaches kind of take the place of the idea of asking questions to yourself if you're not involved in that process in active reading, to keep the attention and to start decoding what we're learning. But it also allows us to ask questions like, what do you already know about this topic? What do you know about photosynthesis? So we can prompt as we go through, as long as the child is aware of the logic system, that they need to click on Pedro on every page. All right, so then it gives us a choice of a layout. So I'll do title page first, just so you can see what that looks like. Okay, it's kind of modular, so it's text-based and picture-based. So if I go to right here as the text, I go photosynthesis. So I'm going to make that, because this is the title page, so I'm actually going to make that much larger. And I'm going to color it green, right, because photosynthesis has to do with plants. And I'm going to centralize that. And then I probably want to stick, so there's your preview right there. I probably want to stick a little picture in there. So if I go photosynthesis, yeah, definition, that's cool. But right now I'm just looking for a picture. Okay, so something generic, something happy. So I'm going to save a copy of this as, I'm just going to throw it on my desktop for the time being. Then I'm going to go back to UDL Book Builder. I'm going to add the item. Okay, so I'm going to choose that file. Pretty sure it was called photosynthesis, but it wasn't there. So right there, photosynthesis. Gonna upload it. Okay. Image of a flower. So if somebody who's using this is actually blind, they're using the screen reader, this allows them to be able to have the text read back to them. But what I'm really interested here in this particular point is down here what Pedro has to say. So if I edit Pedro and say, what do you already know about photosynthesis? Question mark. Okay, so then I save that, and that again is going to allow a certain amount of engagement, metacognition, but with scaffolding built into it because it's creating forced metacognition for the child. So I'm going to add a page after just so you guys can see what that is going to look like in terms of process. So then I go and I choose a layout. In this case, I can do just text, and I'll go back to my photosynthesis definition. So let's do all of that for a second. Go back, add the text. Okay, so this, back that up a little bit. Okay, the process by which green plants and some other organisms can use sunlight to synthesize foods from carbon dioxide and water. Photosynthesis in plants generally involves the green pigment chlorophyll and generates oxygen as a byproduct. Now, for me at this stage, I would be asking myself what I want to learn, given this definition. So, for instance, I want to learn what carbon dioxide is, right? Or I want to learn what other organisms other than green plants can actually use this process, right? So I'm going to hit save there. Then I'm going to just choose the other Pedro. So what, okay, or sorry, given the definition, what do you want to learn about photosynthesis? Save. Okay, so at this point, I mean, I'd obviously keep going step by step to guide them through each step of the process. Again, when we talk about little cognitive steps, that's what we'd be working towards. But what I'm going to do is going to complete the book so you can see what it actually looks like. Okay, so if I go read there. Okay, so this is what the page actually is going to look like in the end, right? Turn my volume up and hit Pedro.
What do you already know about photosynthesis?
Okay, so again, it leads to a more interactive kind of KWL format because obviously at the end, I would ask them to reflect on what they know, and then that would probably be created in the form of an assessment.